My name is Malcolm Saunders, and really excited to share with you medicinal mushrooms you should know. And some famous ones that you've heard, maybe coming through either from, ancestral traditions, like Chinese medicine, like the Orient has had a long relationship with medicinal mushrooms. So we'll talk a little bit about some of those. That's kind of becoming trendy in the health food world. Myself, I've spent majority of my adult life, even since an adolescent, kind of in the health food world, and own and operate a little store in Bowness called Light Cellar. Talk a little bit about it later on, but that's kind of where I come from, the world. So we're going to kind of bring that in, obviously, as foragers. Anybody a mushroom forager or hoping to be? Yeah, getting out into nature. They say that the mushrooms will heal you in two ways when you are a forager. Or nourish you, heal you and nourish you. We're talking about culinary mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms. So getting out into that forest, being with the mushrooms. I mean, that is just healing itself, isn't it? Right? So again, if you get an opportunity to join the Mycological Society and go on a foray, it's, there's all kinds of studies now coming out about the benefits of forest bathing. And a little bit of insight into those studies is it's not only just being in the forest, right? Like breathing that wonderful, beautiful air and all the chemistry that's in the air that the trees are emitting, that the plants are putting out into the air. But actually you get deeper effects when you appreciate. This is what came through in the study. Makes sense, right? When you feel that kinship, when you feel that connection to all of the life around you, that's the deeper benefits of forest bathing. And that's why I like to say the forager gets twice the dose, right? When you're out in the forest and you're harvesting. And just talking with Liz and Remy, who've come from BC, maybe I shouldn't say this, people will be after you with their crate loads of white chanterelles, lobster mushrooms, pine mushrooms. Here in southern Alberta, we're in like a semi-desert region. So, when the mushrooms do pop, it's time to celebrate and it's time to get out there. And, you can't always predict when. Every year it's different in terms of the seasons. We had a lot of rain, which really brought an amazing abundance. I'll reference some of my favorite books, All That the Rain Promises and More. That's a great little key identification book. And as the name suggests, All That the Rain Promises and More, that's the time to get out. And it's really this kind of like eastern slope of the Rockies. We get in Kananaskis, where you can get a nice, good abundance, at least for southern Alberta. Northern Alberta is a lot better than southern Alberta. I know there might be some competition when it comes to sports and that type of thing, but we just give it to northern Alberta when it comes to mushrooms. Like one of my favorite mentors and mycologists, Robert Rogers, he wrote this book. He calls himself an amateur mycologist when he's literally wrote the book on mushrooms. If you ever get a chance to hang out with Robert Rogers, like what a mind. Totally brilliant. Been a herbalist for decades. And he got into mushrooms, as he says, because the plants no longer challenged him. And he thought he'd get into mushrooms. And he writes a book on mushrooms, like the Bible on mushrooms. I did actually bring some of the first edition of the Fungal Pharmacy. I figure if there were ever a group that could appreciate the limited edition, out of print, first run of Robert's book. I've got a few copies of that. These are like the only ones remaining in the world. Maybe you might be able to find some on Amazon for a couple $100, but their book value this evening. Another one he wrote was called Medicinal Mushrooms, the Human Clinical Trials. Right? And one of these things is, he wrote this book in response to, doing a lot of lectures, being, in kind of academic environments as a researcher. And, I come by this honestly, like I was raised very typical standard American diet. Even though I've spent my kind of adult life in health foods, my childhood was anything but. Food to me was whatever was quick, easy, and tasted good. So breakfast cereals were my favorite food of the day. Lucky Charms, Frosted Flakes, these kinds of things. And yeah, everything changed the first time I ate mushrooms, if you know what I mean. As a teenager, right? So some of us come to this path that way. And isn't it amazing? Like, we should celebrate how much more socially acceptable now that has become. Because in my day, it was like, you know, back alley, like secret, like underground. But now it's like at the center of research and institutes where, yeah, it's being fully recognized for the medicine that it is. And that's absolutely wonderful. So some of us who might come from the health food world, some of us might come from, yeah, foraging. Some of us might come from exploring, the psychedelics and that potential. So where I'd like to kind of steer us is medicinal mushrooms. So these are medicinal mushrooms you should know, famous ones that you might hear about. Reishi, does that ring a bell? Lion's mane. Yeah, when I first got into it, like those were like extremely rare, exotic, still on the fringe. And it's funny, just this morning I was reading in Robert's book, because one of my mentors, he does a lot of traveling. He came to town and I was meeting him for the first time. You know, the guy I'd seen on videos, I'd read his books, and, you know, I gave him a reishi mushroom. And that created an instant bond. And I was reading in Robert's book where he definitely has the science, but he's also got the folklore and the mythology and the history. And in China, reishi mushroom is considered very kind of like special and lucky. And it's also, apparently, a woman will gift a man a reishi mushroom as a symbol that she's sexually interested in him. So I was like, oh, I remember gifting David one of those. Oh, we didn't know about that tradition. It's not what I meant. we did form a bond. So anyways, medicinal mushrooms you should know, benefits and uses of famous fungi, but also the local analogs, right? It's one thing to hear about the famed reishi mushroom, but does that grow here? We shall see, we shall see. There are local analogs, similars. We're going to get into that. So we're also going to do a little mushroom bingo. So let me just kind of fast forward here. So tonight you're going to learn about the context of fungi and the human diet, medicinal actions of benefits of not just 9. I added a special bonus one. So in fact, 10 famous fungi. Where to find these mushrooms? I'd like to know where to go, how to find these. Harvesting tips, best methods for preparing and consuming. We're going to do some mushroom bingo. So Nadia's going to hand out your sheets, and if you don't need a pen, she's got things like there's even crayons in the back, and you can start ticking them off. So you get to tick one off if you have seen one of these mushrooms in the wild, or you've harvested one of these mushrooms in the wild, extra special points for that, or you have consumed one of these mushrooms. And we'll see, it might be a high bar, but if you're able to black out your bingo card, I've got a gift worth $300 to somebody who's able to do that. So we'll see.
What is the gift?
Oh, what is the gift?
It's not $300.
Well, yeah, it's not cash, but we'll get to it in the end. And then, so the 10th mushroom I'm going to share, which will be kind of like our little finale, it's actually the rarest mushroom I've ever found. I'll share exactly what that is. Share where it is? I don't know. We'll see. If I don't reveal it during the talk, you can come talk to me and ask me about it. So.
I think I know what you're talking about. Is it at your store?
It's not at the store,
Okay,
no.
it's on that one then.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, this one is in the wild. I went to visit it this morning. Yeah.
It's like sharing fishing holes.
It's like sharing fishing holes, that's right, yeah. And fortunately, I'll share some context around it. Fortunately, it's out of reach, so. But I know somebody who did climb that tree and picked off a little bit, so. Anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. And of course, if you got any questions, this is super informal. We're just here to hang out for the next 60 minutes or so, and we'll have some fun while we're learning. All right. So this is what I call the natural food guide. This is what humans eat, right? So if you were like me, born and raised in this society, what are you taught in terms of food nutrition? The 4 food groups? What, grade 2, Canada Food Guide? How helpful was that? You're probably the most recent graduate through that program, and you'll be up next, sir. Yeah, what a failure of, passing on knowledge to the next generation, at least institutionally, which we shouldn't be getting our information of what to eat from institutions, certainly not the government anyways. Let's leave that to family and traditions. So, ever since I've, a teenager and eating those mushrooms, I've been called a hippie. That might surprise you, but I take that as a compliment if what you mean by hippie is natural. Right? That's always been that kind of my guiding post, my guiding star, because born in, northwest suburban Calgary, going to high school, this kind of a thing, it was just like, this isn't it. Like, what is going on with us, right? Like, we're just way off course. And I've just been trying to come back to nature. And I see that as our highest state is nature. You look at some of the greatest advancements in technology, the idea of biomimicry. We're just trying to mimic nature because nature's got it figured out. So what is natural? And if you think about it, what is the best compliment you can be given? You're a natural. What's the best advice you can give? Just be natural. What are the best foods you can eat? Natural foods, right? So this is the natural food guide for humans. We only actually eat 4 food groups. So we kind of sort of got it right, but totally wrong. When it comes to plants, there's a massive abundance and a huge diversity of plant foods out there for you to choose from, for you to enjoy, that are good, nourishing, and also healing, right? This is the idea of let food be thy medicine, medicine be thy food. Plant foods, amazing. Animal foods. I was a vegetarian for a long time. I was a vegan. I was a raw vegan. I was trying to become a breatharian. I'll just leave all this food stuff behind. Right? Yeah, I'm now, I was into yoga for a while. And in yoga, they're trying to reach these high states of like omnipotence, omniscience. And then it hit me one time. I was like, wait a minute. What's the highest state of the diet? Omnivore, right? Everything, the all-inclusive diet. And what I love about this, the Natural Food Guide, doesn't tell you what to eat, when to eat, or how much to eat. That's the individual decision. That is you following your gut more than nutrition trends. And yeah. Plant foods, animal foods, and again, maybe not as much diversity of plants as there are animals, but there's a massive diversity. We were just talking about eating insects earlier on, which I know has a bit of a bad rap in some circles, but it's such a cultural thing, right? And cultural preferences change. Did you know that once upon a time, lobster was fed to prisoners? It's basically an aquatic insect, and that was like considered very lowly food. Now it would be served in such a fine dining restaurant like we're in today, right? Like these cultural preferences will shift. So huge diversity amongst animals, bacteria. This is the idea of fermented foods. Every single culture around the world includes bacteria as a foundation in their diet, to ferment plant foods, to ferment animal foods, ferment even fungal foods. And then the next, which we're really going to dive into today, which is fungi, right? As a food source. Now, if you'd asked, 8-year-old Malcolm, what would I think about this? Be like, okay, plants, no problem. I eat bread, I got carrots, and I love fruits, and, that's no problem. And sure, like chicken and hot dogs and, this kind of a thing. And bacteria, well, does orange cheese count as a fermented food? Like, okay, if so, great, I got that. And then fungi, well, maybe once in a while I'll allow some white button mushrooms on my pizza. Okay, I get my fungi in. But it extends far beyond that. We think about the kingdom of fungi and all the foods that come from it. Not only mushrooms, because as we know, my good friend Blaine here was making that distinction around mushrooms and fungi. There's the kingdom of fungi, and mushrooms are actually, not all fungi produce mushrooms, but it is fungi that produce mushrooms. It's the reproductive part of the fungi. And so think of it like the apple on the tree, right? The organism could be mycorrhizal. It's like those thread-like organisms in the forest. It also could be single-celled yeasts. Does anybody know Michael Pollan? Famous New York Times writer, food writer. A number of his books have been turned into documentaries. They're amazing. A book called Cooked. There's Omnivore's Dilemma, so on and so forth. Well, he's got a great saying. He says, people call dog man's best friend. He says, I disagree. I think man's best friend is Saccharomyces cerevisiae. This is the yeast that leavens our bread and ferments our beer, right? What an organism that we are absolutely tied at the hip to for how long? Generations upon generations. Yeah, so it is single-celled yeast, it is mushrooms, and today we're going to focus on the medicinal mushrooms, these noble polypores, as they might be described. All right, so let's see. There's the famous one from the shop. Does anybody recognize this one here? See the screen? Yeah, a couple of you here. So this is the famous, what they call ling qi in China, reishi mushroom. And this is one of the largest ones in the world that we have here at Light Cellar. I'll give you context of how big that is right there. Question?
You were saying earlier that women would give reishis. Did the Empress use that one?
Oh, yeah, the Empress, right? So in gifting, with intent.
I'm ready.
Yeah, it's true. For the longest time, that's really interesting that you brought up, like emperors and empresses, like growing in the forest, they were so rare that they were, reserved just for royalty. It's like back in the times of Robin Hood and, through the Nottingham forest, like it was like, no man shall kill the king's deer, like back in China, it was like, no one shall harvest the wild reishi. But now, through technology, through going, we have access to reishi, arguably one of the greatest herbs on earth. One of my early introductions to mushrooms beyond the psilocybin ones. This is a book here written by another mentor and a common friend, Dr. Terry Willard, former Calgarian. He's another convert, moved out to BC. But do you remember when this was published here, Blaine? Like maybe in the 90s or 80s even?
Oh, no, 80, like maybe late 70s.
Late 70s even. So reishi mushroom, herb of spiritual potency and medical wonder. Yeah, incredible. So we're going to go through some of its benefits. And for as many as I could, I brought some kind of like physical, real life samples. A lot of people, they don't quite understand. They're like, oh, has that been shellacked? Is there a coating on that? Well, its Latin name is Ganoderma lucidum. And Ganoderma translates to shiny skin. Derma being skin, shiny. So here's a smaller version. We'll pass that around. Did you know that reishi grows on every continent in the world except Antarctica? And you can find reishi growing all over through North America.
It could be under the snow.
It could even be under the snow in Antarctica. Yeah, so we shouldn't count that out. What a mysterious place, right? We don't even know what's going on down there. It comes in all shapes and forms. This is what they call antler reishi. And you can actually grow them into different shapes. There's also different colors. There's a company I know down in California. They have a product called 22 reishis. They have 22 different varieties that they put into one bottle. There's red reishi, black reishi, purple reishi, and I'll introduce you to our local reishi as well.
Is there any poisonous reishi?
Is there any poisonous reishi? And the answer is no. Yeah, only good stuff, only medicinal. Let's look at some of its benefits, and this is just a short list. In fact, in Robert Rogers' book, I highly recommend you check out the appendix here, because he's got So he states that all medicinal mushrooms are immunomodulators. What does that mean? It means if you have an overactive immune system, helps bring it down. If you have an underactive immune system, helps bring it up. So it modulates the immune system versus being an immunostimulant.
Do people use them for autoimmune disorders?
So the question was, do people use it for autoimmune? And you're exactly right. That's one of the benefits of medicinal mushrooms is you can use them for autoimmune. Yeah, so reishi is a great one that way because it's a modulator versus a stimulant. Somebody who has an autoimmune, the last thing you want is to jack it up, stimulate it. And
What's one that attacks the skin? Psoriasis.
psoriasis, yeah.
Gives reishi.
Yeah. And often too, we know that, deeper under the surface, like, okay, it's the skin, but that's where the symptoms are manifesting.
It's going to his joints. It's like it gets worse.
Right, yeah. Okay, another question there?
Could you elaborate on alleviate allergies?
Okay, great. Yeah, will do. Just gonna find, okay, I got my page there. Yeah, so some herbs will work, from a histamine response because it's an immune response. So again, it's kind of just like modulating, like toning down, moderating that response of the immune system.
Like lessening allergic reactions.
Lessening allergic reactions.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so in here, there's a couple of great tables in the back where he lists out specifically, so we can go into the nitty gritty of, okay, when it says, did I put it up here? Yeah, antiviral. Okay, which viruses? You can get into the specifics of which viruses they've studied that reishi will help protect against. Antibacterial. Here's an interesting one, antifungal. Well, wait a minute, isn't it itself a fungus? And it's antifungal? And this is one of these misconceptions, in the health world. They said, oh, you heard of candida, like this idea that your microbiome, you can have an imbalance of good and bad bacteria, or you can get an overgrowth of yeast internally. It's like, okay, you better stay away from mushrooms because they're fungus and they'll feed the candida. Absolute total misconception. Something like reishi is really good to take with a yeast infection or a candida overgrowth because it's antifungal. And you think about it, it's got to protect itself from lower forms of fungus and yeast. And when you find it in the woods, this is one of the few medicinal mushrooms that is not perennial. So it'll put out that fruiting body. And then once its spores essentially released its seed, gone through its reproductive cycle, it dies. It begins to give itself up, and other lower forms of fungus and things will kind of take it over and break it down. But until then, it's got that resilience to resist that. So you are more closely related to fungi than you are any other kingdom. If we come back to here, right? Us as animals, yes, we have a symbiotic relationship with bacteria. We're nowhere near close to plants. We're much more like fungi. So we can utilize similar chemistry that they do to protect themselves, right? Because what's our form of defenses and protection as animals, right? Like all kinds of things. We can fight, we can run, we can do all these things. What does a plant do? It's got to produce chemistry. What does a fungus do? Similar, right? So there are these chemical factories that are helping protect them, that can protect us as well. All right, so this here, he's kind of listing off kind of general attributes or actions, and then it gets a tick if the particular mushroom has that property. So again, reishi is one of the best. Analgesic, that means pain relieving. Robert didn't give it a tick, but for antibacterial, yes. Antifungal, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, anti-tumor, antiviral, blood sugar regulator, cardiovascular health, cholesterol, hypertension, immune tonic, kidney tonic, liver tonic, nerve tonic, respiratory tonic. Not a sexual tonic, but there are other mushrooms for that. Good for stress, not so much good for vision. But it literally checked almost all the boxes off in that list. So this is a great one. And sure, you can find it from the Orient, but all around North America it grows. And there's different varieties, different versions of it, subspecies. So this one here is called Ganoderma oregonensis, and this is you would find on the West Coast. Anybody been to Stanley Park in Vancouver? Yes, I have. Well, I have not picked reishi mushroom in Stanley Park. I could have picked reishi mushroom in Stanley Park because I've seen it growing on the trees there. And it's that amazing, like finding that in the forest, going like, oh, there's some magic in that, right? A being like that. First time I visited, and the only time I was in Tennessee, the reishis looked like that. I found reishis that look like that in Arizona. But what about Alberta? Okay, we'll get to that. There is a relative, what I like to call an analog, that maybe doesn't have quite the myth and the history and the lore, but is still a similar and still very, very beneficial. When you find it like this, and we passed around the mushroom, I think everyone kind of felt it, right? It's tough, it's woody, right? So this is not a culinary mushroom because of its fiber, its structure. You would not be able to break that down, Chewing would be very difficult. It's like chewing on wood. And then your digestive system would not be able to break it down either. So how do you prepare it? How do you consume it? Well, most classically, it would have been tea, right? Reishi mushroom tea. Terry Willard, in his book, when he describes it as the herb of spiritual potency, right? He would describe it as meditation in a cup, right? It's like liquid forest bathing, internal forest bathing, taking all that goodness from the forest in. So tea is most common nowadays. You can find it in capsules, you can find it in extract powders, you can find it in tinctures. And you know what they say about herbs? The herbs don't work unless you take them. Now, I did mention just being around these in the forest. Being in the forest is a magical thing. But Dr. Terry Willard, he has not missed a single day in 50 years of taking reishi mushroom every day. And these are described as tonics or superior herbs, as they say in Chinese medicine. They're adaptogens. So there's a gradual kind of build up of the benefits. When we say like immunomodulation, we have customers come in all the time and say, it's not like one of these works like a wonder the first time you take it. You might definitely experience something, but it's a slow build. So they might say, oh, the kids are getting less sick, less frequently, or there's a lesser intensity, frequency of it. And so there's an accumulation, a build of those properties. Now, when you find, and I hope you do find, reishi mushroom in your time of being a mushroom forager, again, every continent in the world, go to BC, go to Ontario, there's lots of reishi at a particular time of year. And again, it's one of those ones that fruits during a certain time of year, and then it dies back, disappears. We're going to meet many other medicinal mushrooms that actually stay on the tree year round, and you can harvest those. So when you do find them, again, tough and woody, but when they're in that fresh state, look how big that is, right? The hand compared to that, that's almost kind of life size. I mean, that will create you gallons and gallons of tea. So you can harvest a mushroom like that, and then you would very carefully slice it. So to create more surface area, and then you would add, 3, 4, 5 slices of the mushroom, and then do a nice gentle, what's called a decoction, simmer it down. So this is very different than you get a herbal tea from the store and it's a little in the little tea bag and you just steep it. That won't work for reishi, not at all. You gotta bring your water to a boil, add those slices, or sometimes it's ground into a powder, and then give it a nice gentle simmer to really pull and extract those properties.
Are there any concerns with disrupting the gut biome with antibacterial or
Oh, really good question. Yeah. Is there any kind of indication or risk of disrupting the gut microbiome? Not that I am aware of or come across. I would say, some herbs are so potent, that they become, like if you take, oregano oil, a lot of people feel like that's just too strong. It's like an antibiotic and it will actually kill your good bacteria as well. I learned this from Blaine, that the most potent natural antibiotic, or antimicrobial that does not affect your gut microbiome is cinnamon. Is that correct?
I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So you can take a lot of herbs, reishi included, that will have, a positive antifungal, antimicrobial benefit, but without knocking out your good bacteria. Yeah, what a great question. Any other questions on kind of use or preparation? All right. Okay, so here's our local species. This is Ganoderma, so same species, applanatum, but a different variety, also known as the artist conch. And I'll pass around at the table there. I've got some larger specimens, but here's a nice kind of little handheld pocket version of the artist conch, Ganoderma applanatum. And so very, very, very similar. Doesn't quite have the the legends and the thousands of years of historical use and reverence in the Orient, but this does grow here. In fact, on my bike ride this morning, I saw one of these growing off a tree in Calgary. So you can absolutely find this in Calgary and surrounding area.
Is there a safe way or a proper way to cut them or to harvest them?
Okay, what a great question. So let's jump into harvest. Yeah, what's kind of the safe way? You can see that this one here, I just kind of broke it off the tree. So actually everything we're gonna look at tonight grows on trees. So the tree polypores, the underneath, there's no gills, there's no teeth, there's no kind of sponge layer. These are polypores, and they do grow off the trees. Some of them are parasitic, some of them are saprophytic, some of them are mycorrhizal, and that's just to do with like their relationship to the trees. And so this one here, you can think of it almost like every portion of it is like a year of growth. And so underneath that white, so this one would have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like 8 years, right? It was growing down versus out. Some of them can get massive, right? Just like the other reishi. And, you might say, well, Malcolm, you jerk. This is 8 years old and you just ripped it off the tree. Well, out of that tree, that dead log, there was dozens of these just popping out. And so you can take one, right? As a forager, you want to kind of be mindful of kind of ethical harvesting. And then we can also think of the fact that, again, this is the fruiting body. The mycelium was had infiltrated that whole tree, and it was just putting out these fruiting bodies to reproduce and spread its spores. And right now, in fact, the one that I found this morning that I just was bike riding by, you could tell that it had this brown kind of rust on top as well as around it. Anybody know what that kind of rust, dust? Spores. Yeah, which they say, I don't know if this is true, but I've heard someone say that the spores of the mushrooms are 90 times more immunologically active than the fruiting body itself. Now, what's... It's all good.
Just really quickly, to
Yeah.
answer how to harvest it as well.
Yes.
If you're using it medicinally, you can just take the outermost growth layer from the fresh year
Yes.
and it'll continue to grow next season.
Yeah.
Bounce back. If you rip off the whole thing, of course it comes back, but you can come back to the same big conch year after year as it recovers.
Yes, I love that. So that's one of my strategies. And so what he's talking about here, so you can see on this mushroom here, and even on the tree a little bit, that kind of brown rust. So this one had spored, and underneath is this beautiful white spore pad layer that those come out of and up, and that's that fresh growth. So you can actually, cut along the edge. So even though I showed, kind of the growth rings going down, typically it's growth rings going out. So you can actually cut. Amazing. Love that. Whether it's red-belted polypore or it's the Ganoderma applanatum, you can cut around the edge and then just take off that kind of growing edge, and it will continue to grow out. And then, mark the spot. Don't tell anybody where your fishing holes are, right, Blaine? And that will continue to grow each year. And again, some of them that have been found are absolutely massive. Yeah, it's a wonderful thing. And then, of course, artist conch, because that beautiful white spore pad, you can do amazing artwork on it. So if you're following along on your bingo card, has there been any mushroom that you've seen in the wild that we've covered so far that you have harvested in the wild? And obviously, we got somebody experienced here. Or maybe you've just taken it, right? Like somebody offered you reishi mushroom tea, or you've been to Light Cellar and you had some. Like, you get to check that off. And we got a nice big prize coming up for the winner. All right, so this one here is analgesic, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory, anti-tumor, antiviral, blood sugar balancer, immune tonic, respiratory tonic, and a vision tonic. All right, who knows this one? Should look familiar to a lot of you. Yeah, oyster. Yeah, cool. One of the great medicinal mushrooms that, now, similar to reishi, is being grown. So you can purchase a locally grown oyster mushroom. You can harvest it in the wild. So probably maybe as early, I'm not sure if I've ever harvested it in June. It's possible, but definitely in July. Maybe sometimes as late as August here in this area. You can harvest oyster mushroom. Very common. I found it in Calgary. I've got a tree in Beaumont Park that I go to every year, and it flushes out big oyster mushrooms. Blaine was saying he had one in Edworthy Park that fed him for years until it just basically, like, it's one of these saprophytic or saprotrophic mushrooms that's it's consuming the dead and decaying wood, mostly on the hardwoods, your aspens, your poplars. That's what this one will be growing on. Sometimes it's a standing dead tree where you'll see it, or it's fallen over, and then you can see it just kind of coming out, and absolutely beautiful. Did I have another? Yeah, there we go. There's a good example of like nice flush. That's the one in Beaumont. So across from Boness. Don't you go find it. I'll get there before you. But very common, again, through Kananaskis, obviously into BC, up in northern Alberta. And this is another one where this is kind of a seasonal flush, right? The mycelium, it's in the tree, and then they're putting out these fruiting bodies. Now, this one, unlike the last two, is a delicious culinary mushroom, right? Hopefully, everybody has tasted some oyster. Hopefully, you've tasted your own wild harvested oyster. If not, put it on your list as, bucket list, something to do. And then if not, for sure, go to your local farmer's market, like who's growing them. They're being produced locally, and they're a real, not only are they delicious, but they're also medicinal, right? Have you heard of like statin drugs? Right? You might know somebody that's taking statin drugs. If so, I only say this because I know somebody, he was an old landlord of mine, and we had to move because he had literally lost his mind from taking statins. And he realized it too late, right? Because what is your brain? It's primarily fat. It needs cholesterol. And he actually ended up discovering this. And again, it was too late. And he read a book called The Memory Thief. And it's all about statin drugs. It was written by a guy that used to work for NASA, had a similar experience and wanted to kind of make this known to the world. Like, be careful. But oyster mushroom contains natural statins, lovostatins. And as a part of your regular diet, can help regulate cholesterol. It's also antibacterial, antioxidant, anti-tumor, antiviral. Again, that immune modulation, nerve tonic, respiratory tonic, reduces cholesterol levels, supports cardiovascular, and oyster mushroom, hypertension. So that's oyster mushroom, Pleurotus ostriatus. Again, bingo, you got that one. Most people should be able to cross that one off. Okay, all right, here's another famous one, both a delicious culinary mushroom as well as a medicinal mushroom. What would you say? What's the name? Lion's mane, right on. Yeah, cool. So this last picture here, this is found in the wild. This was not my photograph. We don't have this particular species growing in Alberta. But again, people are growing them as well. So here's a very typical example. Some sort of substrate in a bag is myceliated, and then they begin to fruit under certain conditions. It's amazing. You just think about the potential of what we have access to. Not only these are in health food stores, they're in our forests, and we can also grow them at home, right? Somebody here was growing mushrooms in their backyard. Who's growing mushrooms in their backyard? Yeah, you guys, cool. I remember when I was 16, my mother gave me a shiitake log for my birthday, and I grew shiitake mushrooms. Yeah, that was kind of, I don't do a lot of growing of mushrooms, but yeah, I've done it a few times, and it's a great, wonderful thing.
Lion's mane just cooked with some decent oil and garlic. If you were blindfolded and I gave you that, you'd swear you were eating lobster.
All right, so Blaine says lion's mane cooked with some butter and garlic. If you were blindfolded, you would think you were tasting the most amazing lobster.
I used to, on portage trails.
I'm going to give you the mic here. Just you can tell your stories.
Well, I'll be brief.
Yeah.
I used to do a lot of canoeing on the Churchill River in central Saskatchewan. And if we're on a busy portage trail that other people are going to be using, I remember one morning where I said, there's a whole bunch of lancing, and this woman mother with her family who were going to be they were going to be ahead of us on the portage trail soon. She said, "Oh, can you eat those?" No, these are very, very, very poisonous. I'm trying to get them off the trail so that you shouldn't even really touch these with your skin. She said, "Well, you're touching with your." No, I'm a mycologist, and I have a special cream that I use to close up my pores. A complete crock-a-hooey. I just didn't want them to get up the trail before me, right?
Yeah. Oh, hilarious. Who's pulled that one? No, those are poisonous. You better collect them for me. Yeah. Okay, real delicacy and medicinal benefits. Let food be thy medicine, medicine be thy food. Nerve tonic, neuroprotective, induces synthesis of nerve growth factors. There's a famous study out of Japan where double-blind, placebo-controlled study, people, in the age range, I believe it was like 50 to 80, already experiencing cognitive decline. Two groups split. The control group given placebo, the other group given 1 gram of lion's mane 3 times a day, and they were measured at 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, and after 2 weeks, the group taking the lion's mane began to score better on cognitive tests, and it began improving over that length of time. So like I say, sometimes you'll feel like instant, benefit, like clarity, but it's this kind of slow build. It's a tonic in that sense. And we get anecdotally people coming to the shop all the time, and it's helped increase memory, focus, concentration, lion's mane. Also, great for the immune system, inhibitory effect on cancers, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, antifungal, antimicrobial, analgesic and pain relieving, ameliorates digestion. There's this whole gut-brain connection, and the lion's mane has been also very indicated that's great for the gut. There's been a lot of studies around reducing anxiety and depression, and also be said to be protective to the cardiovascular system. So this is definitely a mushroom you can find. This one, the Hericium erinaceus, although I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that right. That is the Latin. Yeah.
Say it the way you want to say it.
All right, good.
All right.
We're going for it. You definitely in kind of the eastern part of North America. So I got friends that will harvest this kind of on the East Coast, wild, this particular variety. But what do we got here out west? Anybody harvested Hericium species here? All right, another, yeah, he can tick it off. All right, wonderful. Here it is. This is one of them. The Hericium coralloides. I know there's some changes with Latin names. This is the coral tooth mushroom. There's also the bear's head mushroom. And what a sight. I mean, so beautiful. You're in the forest and you see that, like that just lights up your day. Not only because it's gorgeous, but you know what it is, right? Then you start.
First time, I was like, I found an alien.
An alien.
The
Yeah.
texture
Yeah.
of that is so nice.
The texture's nice. Yeah, so these are really good eaters to cook up. You can also dry them and then powder them and take them that way internally, like sprinkle it on your food. You can tincture them. What does that mean? That means to put them into alcohol, some sort of a liquid extract, and then it's just like whoosh, straight into the bloodstream.
How does the method of preparation affect like how bioavailable the properties are?
Oh, what a great question. So how does the method of preparation affect kind of the bioavailability of the nutrients? Well, as I mentioned earlier, like with these, a lot of these tree polypores, they're tough, they're woody. You actually need a certain amount of heat to be able to extract that medicine. Or alcohol will also do it. Alcohol, they say that water is the universal solvent. It does a pretty good job, right? But alcohol does an even better job. What's that?
Well, just rosins.
Yeah, rosins, resins, there's certain like hydrophobic compounds. So you'll get a much fuller extraction and spectrum of the compounds with what's called a dual extract. So you can use water, with heat, and then also add alcohol, which not only preserves, but it extracts and then it delivers straight into the system. So the simplest, easiest way to make your own tincture at home is literally just get 40% vodka and then put your herbs in there. And you let it sit for at least 2 weeks, and then it will pull and extract. It's essentially how you make vanilla extract. Vanilla extract is a herbal tincture. We just use it as flavoring, right? But it does have herbal properties. And so you can make your own medicinal mushroom tinctures. And when you do, then it preserves it forever. And you can access that medicine. It's instantly straight into the bloodstream. With lion's mane, there has been some studies to suggest that the heating, if you cook it too high, you will, I think it's the arenaceans, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which are denatured or damaged through heat. So there is a kind of suggestion that lion's mane, I'm not sure, in tincture form or dried is better that way, lower temperature. But by all means, eat your medicine too.
I've never seen one that clean. Like I suggest, I always had an extra toothbrush.
Right. Okay. So Blaine's talking about the quote unquote the cleanliness, right? Like we're literally on the forest floor, mouse poop. Yeah, I mean that's why a lot of mushroom knives. Anybody have a mushroom knife where it's got those little brushes on the back? Hot tip as a forager, I like to clean as I go. Right before I put it in the basket, you harvest it, you clean it off, any debris, maybe there's some conifer needles, that kind of thing. Otherwise, you end up with a massive box and then you spend an hour doing it, right? Versus like clean as you go.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, because you probably have a better answer to this than I would be able to find, but do you notice any difference or have you done any testing to confirm whether the wild mushrooms you're finding have the same compounds growing out of them as the cultivated ones?
Yeah.
Because depending on the substrate, I imagine that would change.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so great. The difference between, the wild mushrooms versus the cultivated mushrooms, and you're 100% right, like the substrate matters, right? Even to the point that if you don't use the right substrate, so particular mushrooms, some like to grow in hardwoods, some like to grow on softwoods and particular types of trees. And if you don't use the right, I remember early in my day, like we ordered all these mushroom growing kits, that we had the spores, we had plugs. And what we didn't realize is like we just found some old logs, like we're drilling holes in old logs and hitting them in. It's just like reishi was never going to grow on that log, right? It wasn't the right type of wood. And it was an old log that was already myceliated, by some other fungus. So there was competition there. So you need fresh wood of the right variety. Now in China, there's a reishi called what they call donwood, which is like the original wood, basswood, and it's become. I mean, if you think like mushrooms are kind of like known about and used in North America, they're getting really popular. Like, I don't know how many billions of dollars it's worth as an industry. Like, it's minuscule compared to what's going on in Asia. And the growing of reishi mushroom is such a thing. It's actually a concern for deforestation, like for using the wood, because it's like it's superior, produces a superior form of mushroom when you grow it on the wood as you would find in the wild. So there's a company that started growing it on a substrate of 42 different medicinal herbs. And what they found is that there were compounds in their reishi that are not found in any other reishi, like unique novel compounds, because it's a substrate that it's growing on is influencing what is in the final product. So you can have it on wood, you can have it on sawdust, you can have it on straw. There's different mediums that it's grown on, and there is a variation. That being said, if we take cordyceps as an example, which is one of the most expensive herbs in the world, wild cordyceps, and if you don't know what cordyceps are, it's where the zombies come from. If you watch that show, The Last of Us, right? Or you've seen the BBC documentaries where it's like the ants get infected or the caterpillars, and it literally takes over their central nervous system, like causes them to go up trees and out on the farthest branch, and then outgrows their head as a fungus. So I have a cordyceps on my table if you want to see it, and it's from a caterpillar, and it's 100% fungal. Right? So there's no insect remaining. It's been completely myceliated in a fruiting body, like out the top of its head. And it's one of the most expensive herbs in the world because they're really hard to find, right? And cordyceps, you can find them in Alberta, you can go to South America. I think the one that I have is from the Andes, but they're kind of famed in Chinese medicine, in Tibet, that really high elevation. And we were having this conversation earlier. How did these ancient cultures know? Right? So cordyceps is not on the slideshow, but I mean, it's one of these ones that it's great for stamina, utilizing oxygen, like a lot of athletes will use it. It's very revered in China, the doctrine of signatures. I mean, a lot of mushrooms are very phallic, just to begin with, but my friend Denis Manzer, he likes to call cordyceps cordysexy because it's a major aphrodisiac. So these cultures, like, how did they know? Who was the first person that was like, I'm going to eat that, right? How do you know it's safe? How do you know it's going to have the effect that you want? Well, the yak herders, or they've got their goats or whatever, would take them up to the high elevation to graze. And all of a sudden, the yaks are getting it on, right? It's like, what's gotten into them, right? It's like, oh, they're eating that. Maybe I should try that, right? Like, oh, I think that's how they discovered it. So with cordyceps, they found that there's actually no difference between the wild and the cultivated. So here's something that might have been like $10,000 a kilogram that we can grow even on rice or some like medium, and it's got the same benefits. So we go from like, this is just for the elite and the royalty and the emperors and the empresses to, hey, we can all have some and grow some and eat some and get the benefits from it. So yeah, what a great question. All right, so that's our local Hericium. You will absolutely find this in the forests. I found this in Calgary again, found this in Kananaskis out into BC, and it's a wonderful sight to behold, delicious mushroom to eat, and great neuroprotective benefits. All right, who knows this? Chaga. All right, yeah, let's get into it. There's Denis Manzer, if you don't know him. He's part of the Mycological Society. You might see him at some of the forays and the gatherings. Innonotus obliquus. This is just a small list. I mean, chaga's got over 200 constituents that contribute to its medicinal actions. Actually, I didn't bring it. Just like reishi, there's whole books just written on that single mushroom, right? There's so much literature. It's said that reishi is the most well-studied herb on earth. More than peppermint, more than turmeric, more than you name it, right? Like peer-reviewed studies. Back to Robert Rogers. That's why he created this book, right? There was so much out there. It was like, mushrooms, right? My father, I quote him, I do not believe in herbs. Oh, don't believe in herbs? I didn't know if it was a matter of belief. I'm sure placebo plays a little bit of a role, but like there's hardcore science. So Robert wanted to put together a book that at that time was human clinical trials, not just petri dishes, not animal studies, like there's substantial studies, human clinical trials, double-blind, placebo-controlled, clearly demonstrating the benefits. So we've got the modern science, but of course we have ancient cultures and traditions that have been using these mushrooms. You've heard of Otsu the Iceman, I'm sure, right? The oldest, most well-intact human specimen that's been found. He was like basically flash frozen in the Alps. And he had, was it 3 species of fungus? Two species of fungus on him, right? Like he didn't have a backpack full of all kinds of stuff, but it was so important he had fungus. So been used for all kinds of things. Again, this is just a bit of a list: analgesic, anodyne, anti-allergenic, antibacterial, anti-cancer, anti-hypoglycemic, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, anti-parasitic, anti-tumor, antiviral, blood purifier, blood sugar balancer, cardioprotective, fights bronchitis, improves circulation, immunomodulating, induces apoptosis, which is basically the destruction of cancer cells, intestinal protection, colitis, gastritis, digestive inflammation, liver purification and detoxification, and an incredible source of minerals, including zinc. It's one of the most mineral-rich, probably I would say the most mineral-rich mushroom. So if you're looking for like a mineral supplement, it's one of the most alkalizing substances as well, and makes a delicious cup of tea that you can take daily, as a tonic. You can also get it as extracts, liquid, powder, capsules, you name it. Traditionally, it was actually, hot water was poured on it, and then it would sit for 3 or 4 days, and then strained, and then that was heated up and drunk. So there's different ways to prepare it, tea being the most common. But what about this one? Okay, so where do you find this one? Let's go back to that. The primary host of chaga is birch. Do we have any birch in southern Alberta? I mean, in the yards, right? There's the odd one. But primarily, we have the aspen, parkland. So how many times have I had someone tell me, I found chaga? Oh, you found chaga, did you? Yeah, where were you? Oh, just outside Bright Creek? No, you didn't find chaga. I'm sorry. So there's many things that can look like it, right? This is not chaga. This is actually growing on an aspen tree. It's just like a burl. And it's true, like it's kind of sort of clothed. It's kind of like black growth, a little bit of like orange color underneath. So I can understand, but this is one of the importance of knowing your trees. When you know your trees, that will help you know your mushrooms or areas of what you might find, right? Middle of the summer, Alberta's provincial mushroom, who knows what it is?
Is it aspen?
The aspen bolete, right? If you see an aspen stand in the middle of the summer, it's like, hey, let's go look for some boletes in there, right? Alexinum, we will have a good chance of finding some. Or you find what looks like Alexinum, you think it's an aspen bolete, but you're in conifer forest. It's something else, right? Or in the case of chaga, is it birch? So if you go more towards the boreal, like north of Red Deer, yeah, you have a good chance of finding chaga. Around Rocky Mountain House, I have friends that go harvest. Up in northern Saskatchewan, you'll be able to find chaga. Through BC, you'll be able to find chaga, but southern Alberta, no. However, what can you find here in southern Alberta? The aspen conch. So this is a medicinal mushroom tree that does grow in aspens. Next time you're out in that aspen parkland, heck, even if it's up in Nose Hill Park, wherever you get a prevalence of aspen, likely you will find those aspen conch. This is a parasitic fungi that grows on the living trees that they have found actually is protective to the tree. And there might be, 4 or 5 or even 10 of these kind of growing up the tree. And it's not going to be on every tree. You'll find it on some, but not all. And to harvest, you can just take a knife and just pop it off. You can even do like half of it, that type of thing. And then, yes, Blaine had shared, and I think this is similar, where he was saying that when he was harvesting, you could cut a section off and then it will actually regrow. So you were thinking about an inch per year, it might regrow.
If it's a place that you're going to come back to.
If it's a place you're going to come back to.
Literally on large property.
Right.
And I wouldn't until, it was so funny, I had a student graduate.
Okay, let's give them the mic here. Blaine's a storyteller.
Sorry, one of my students who was finishing his degree had to do a mini thesis on something, and he wanted to do it on chaga,
Right.
and he wondered where he could go to pick some here. And I said, well, from all of my hiking south of the Trans-Canada Highway, there's 3 birch trees. That's where they, there's 3 that I've found, and I'm not going to tell you where they are. So
Yeah.
you got to just go north even halfway to Edmonton, and then get into the foothills, and you'll find some birch trees. And then,
Yeah, then you'll find some chaga for sure. All right. Okay, aspen conch, not to be sneezed at. And again, a lot of this information I'm pulling from these books. Terry's book, The Reishi Mushroom, Robert's books. So antifungal, antiviral, antitumoral, detoxifying, restorative to the internal organs, a soothing diuretic, a digestive tonic, relieves diarrhea if you need. And some of these mushrooms were actually used topically as well. So this one was used as a styptic, where they would cut thin slices of it, soak it, and then put it on wounds. I overheard a conversation around puffballs. That's an easy one. That's a beginner mushroom. If you don't know puffballs, start there. So easy to identify. Because they're so fun, especially in their like sporing phase, right? You like stomp on them or squish them and like poof. Did you know that brown powder was used topically on wounds? They've used puffballs, the fresh ones, as bandages as well. Yeah. All right, aspen conch, very common. You should be able to find that. Ooh, here's an interesting one. All right, anybody know this one? Yeah, tremolo. All right, I have a good feeling you're going to be winning the bingo here. Yeah.
It's on the board. I think you disqualified.
Yeah, right on. Okay, so tremolo, this is one that's kind of coming up in the health food world, getting a lot of attention. And rightly so. Let's look at its benefits. Right, supports, in Chinese medicine, they say it supports the lungs, the stomach, the kidneys, skin hydration and elasticity. So it's known as the beauty mushroom. It is what we call humectant. So it like brings and helps hold moisture in the skin. Also improves cognitive function. Chaga is that. I mean, a lot of the mushrooms, you start looking at the studies and there's connection between the brain and kind of mental capacity. I think mushrooms just in general tends to attract people with a high intellect. Not that, I think it could be argued that eating mushrooms and being into the mushrooms improves your intellect, but it's such a fascinating like depth of study. You get into all the classifications, like it draws people with a big intellect. I'm not saying that about myself, I'm just saying we're amongst, company and a lot of these studies, right? So it promotes neural health, enhances memory and focus, it's antioxidant, immune support, healthy joints, cardiovascular health, liver protective, helps maintain blood sugar and insulin levels. Again, in China, this is one of their top mushrooms. Like you can get it as a kind of a delicacy, good culinary mushroom, delicious, but it's also making its way out into the health food world as a supplement. But what do we have around here? Have you found one of these in Alberta? No, I've never have either, right? I don't think you will, but here's one that you will find, which I think is an analog, a similar to these famed, amazing medicinal mushrooms we're learning about. The witch's butter, also a tremolo species. So, immune stimulation, radiation protection, anti-diabetic, anti-inflammatory, hypocholesteremic, hepatoprotective, meaning good for the liver, anti-allergenic. There's that humectant, right? So it like locks in moisture, helps bring moisture to the skin, locks it in, skin protective, and then topically pH neutral. Now, if you come across this mushroom, and it'll look exactly like that, experiment with it. I brought some to Vivian to the office, and we were just like putting it on our skin. And have you ever like felt aloe? You ever put like fresh aloe vera on your skin and then it leaves that nice like film? You're like, I feel so good and hydrated. Like that's what this stuff does to you as well. That same nice like I don't know, just like slippery kind of moistureness. Fair warning, because this one is orange, there's a slight tinge, so you might You know, like orange man, you know, kind of a tit. Yeah, you got your Trump tan going on. Yeah, question here. Okay, so how do you eat this one? This one you can eat raw. It's just like, it's like flavorless. It just has this kind of gelatinous-like quality. The tremolas that are eaten in China are mostly like in soups and cooked that
Are
way.
they black in China? Are they black?
I don't know. There might be black ones. Yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, the most common ones around here that I've seen, they're orange. So very easy to identify, and I dub it, it's our local tremola.
Could it grow on juniper?
That's a good question. Maybe. I'm not sure.
Looks similar to something I had on my.
Okay, yeah, maybe it grows on juniper. I don't know. I don't have enough experience with it. All right, okay. Oh, I revealed it. So the most rare mushroom I've ever found, this is number 10, and we're almost wrapping it up. Agaricon. So you might know this guy, Paul Stamets. He's written a number of books, including this one. This is kind of an early one, the Mycomedicinals. Smaller version of some of the work that Robert has done as well. Amazing man. Probably most responsible for kind of popularizing, fungi, not only for the medicinal compounds, but growing psilocybin, as well as mycoremediation, right? His book, Mycelium Running, and talking about using fungi, mycelium, to help restore natural habitats, whether it's like post-nuclear or oil spills or you name it. I mean, the future is fungi, and what they will be able to do for us as allies is absolutely incredible. And big shout out to him. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this is his favorite mushroom. I'm pretty sure. He's collected over 100 different species. He thinks this mushroom is so valuable, it's a matter of national self-defense, that he's taken it upon himself to harvest, all these different species wherever he can find them, and then he takes little samples and he grows them out in tissue culture, and he's got over 100 different species now that he's collected. And so for many years I've sought and studied Agaricon, Paul says, an unusual mushroom native to the old-growth conifer forests of North America and Europe. Agaricon contains antiviral molecules new to science. Researchers for pharmaceutical companies may have missed its potent antiviral properties. So he was doing a lot of work with Agaricon in COVID, during that time, and he's still just a big believer in this is potent medicine. One of the challenges, like he says, it only grows in old growth. So how do you think I've been able to find it here in Calgary? Well, let's review some of the benefits here first. Immune stimulant, antiviral, anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, lung and respiratory support, including treatment for tuberculosis. Some studies around that. So, this is a picture I took this morning here in Calgary. Does anybody see? I know this is a small picture. You might not actually be able to pick it out. But this is old growth forest in Calgary. What? Calgary's got old growth forest? Yes, these are some of the biggest Douglas firs east of the Rockies. And they're here in Calgary. Not many people know about them at all.
On the other side of the river, by Bistros Cafe there.
You're thinking of the right area. So north facing slope, there's the Douglas Fir Trail. Yes, 100%, right, Edworthy Park, Angels Cafe, other side of the river. Yes, there's some beautiful Douglas firs over there. That's not it. Not in Fish Creek. Yeah. So anyways, it's in Bowness. Let's zoom in here. Let's check this out. I call this the Calgaricon. And there's literally only a handful of us know where this is. And fortunately, as you can see, it's way up the tree. I had a friend scale that tree. I don't know how he got up there, but he got up there, and because we're dude, there's Agaricon. That's incredible. This only grows in old growth forest. This is I found it in BC, sure. And even that was it's such a wonderful, unique surprise. But yeah, we could just tell by looking at it, it was an Agaricon. And then he scaled the tree, cut off a tiny little piece, and we tasted it. We're it's Agaricon. We could tell just from the flavor alone. The indigenous people used to call it spirit bread, or it's also been known as quinine conch as well. So there's the Calgaricon. We have it growing here in Calgary, and it's about right now the size of a softball, maybe a little bit larger. And yeah, fortunately, it's way up on the tree, so it shall live on. Okay, well, there's also some other magic going on in Bowness. So I mentioned my shop, Light Cellar. We take.
Beautiful shop, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's homegrown. Started in my basement, and yeah, we were living in actually in the south of Calgary, and then Montgomery, and then we opened up a little storefront. It's got to be at least 15 years ago. But we'll take people on plant walks, foraging. So learning your local mushrooms, learning your local plants. We also produce. So this is a copper still. I'll do hydrosols. I have actually done mushroom hydrosols, reishi mushroom one and a red belted polypore. So we get into the production. We make tinctures, chocolate, medicinal mushroom chocolate, big on that. We've got an elixir bar. You can come in, you can get a reishi tea or a chaga tea, or these elixirs that we mix up that all have a base of medicinal mushrooms. I've written a book called Elixir Life. It'll kind of walk through that whole philosophy. And all right, here comes our prize for the bingo. On your card, who got close? Who got a full blackout? All right, amazing. Cool. Okay, so you're going to get the, so for a number of years, when did we start? Yeah, 2021, 2022, 2023, we did the Medicinal Mushroom Symposium. And over those 3 years, we had 24 exports, 38 sessions, 40 hours of videos learning all about mushrooms, from culinary mushrooms to psychedelic mushrooms to medicinal mushrooms to even using mushrooms in bushcraft. We didn't talk about it, but some of those mushrooms that I've posted, like chaga, was used to start fires, right? Or the tinder conch, it was used to like transport fire. So it's like the full spectrum, and that's a $300 value. So there we are. I'll get your email and we'll send you that afterwards. And what was your name?
Ethan.
Ethan. Okay, right on, Ethan. That's a rare thing in this room. He was able to black out the bingo card. Awesome. And for those of you runners up, if you want, you can get this course for free, The Healing Powers of Medicinal Mushrooms with myself and Denis Manzer. You just go to lightcellar.ca. We've got live classes as well as online courses. This is under online courses, and you can just access that for free if you want to go a little bit deeper into some of the stuff that we talked about. All right, you can find me on social media, so on and so forth. And so I think there's going to be more food, right, Nadia? Yeah, okay, right on. So what I would like you to do, and I really encourage you, is, maybe use your bingo card as that introduction piece. Like, meet somebody new here tonight and ask them, like, how many did you get? Have you ever harvested? What's been your experience? Maybe it's one of those like fishing stories. Oh yeah, I found this ganoderma, it was like this big. Do you have any stories that you can share about some of the mushrooms, either that you've harvested, or maybe you have benefits of like, I've been taking lion's mane for, 5 years, my brain's this big, yeah. So maybe you're growing mushrooms. I really encourage you as we kind of finish out the rest of the evening and we enjoy all these wonderful foods that have been so amazingly prepared by the folks at Park Sidewalk Citizen. Let's give them a round of applause. And then we'll give Nadia another round of applause. Thank you for organizing. And then do you want to take the mic to kind of share what's happening the rest of the evening?